Just flat out say it.
Give it to me.
If the Warriors had to do it over again, they wouldn't have gotten Durant. And I think the facts bear that out. In a vacuum, Chris, people are going to say, wait, so we're getting rid of Barnes, Bogut, Ezeli, and Barbosa, and we're adding the second best player in the world. Of course we're going to do that. Like, definitely, no question. What they didn't account for, and what I don't think many people accounted for, and I now think we have a big enough sample size to see it, is what Durant's arrival was going to do to the guy who used to be the second best player in the world, Stephen Curry. They didn't just trade those 4 players in order to clear up space for Durant. The other thing they did was they affected Steph Curry, who was the second best player in the world, and now he's closer to the 10th best player in the world. And for anyone that says, well, okay, well, they'd still do it. The facts and evidence are this. Last year, they were 7-3-9. Right now, they're a coin flip to even be the 1 seed. It's because Durant got hurt. Yeah, players get hurt. Like, I think the opposite opinion is the one, the Warriors made the right move. That opinion is the one that has to be proven. I think this one, it just appears obviously true because last year's Warriors team, CC, was the best team I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was the best team we'd ever seen, and the way they played basketball was really, really special. Even when they had Durant, if we look at the sample size, the games we had him in, it was enough of a sample to say, yes, they are a good team. Yes, they can be a great team. But just like when LeBron left Cleveland, went to Miami, there's going to be, when you put a big 3 together, there's going to be holes in your roster. All right? You're going to have a hard time having a big man. You're going to have a hard time maintaining your bench. And also, when you have 3 shooters as your big 3, there's a spacing problem. There's a shot problem. And there's a lack of freedom problem. So when you say Steph went from number 2 best player in the world to around number 10, it's because the space that Kevin Durant occupies on the floor, what Kevin Durant can do, he doesn't need any help. He can get any shot that he wants to get. He can score with the best of them in the league, but you take away their height. You take away that explosive bench. You take away a lot of variables that they did have. They had a number of different styles. That team that won 73 games only lost 9. A number of different styles they could play. The best style was up and down. Best 3, we're going to take it.
Yep.
First available 3, we're going to take it. In transition, in the half court, we're going to take it. They can't do that anymore. Well, so they lost the number of variables for which they can win. Their bench could win them a number of games.
No doubt.
All right? They don't have that. So I agree with you. You have to question it, but in the long run, when we look back 5 years from now, this team with Kevin Durant could say, yes, we won a couple championships. They won more, but the team is not better as a whole in 2016-17 than they were last year in 15-16.
Well, we'll see if they win a couple championships. Because if they don't win it this year, they all of a sudden, Sean Livingston can leave. Andre Iguodala can leave.
Yes.
But I've got all these numbers in front of me about the difference between Steph Curry's performance last year and Steph Curry's performance this year. I think it boils down to one number. Last year, Draymond Green shot 39% from 3. This year, Steph Curry is shooting 39% from 3.
With a lot more attempts.
Of course.
But he is the best shooter that we've ever seen.
He was last season.
The season before that.
He was looking like he was the best shooter we've ever seen. And that right there is my point. That's the magic that's gone. I watched the Warriors 2 years ago and liked them. I watched them last year and didn't like them. But whether I liked them or didn't like them, I recognized something. We were watching a style of basketball that we'd never seen, and we were watching a team play with more free-flowing confidence and instilling abject fear.
They had more swag.
And other teams knew it, and other teams felt like it would appear, even if they were up 8 with 5 minutes to go. Their opponent was. The opponent was like, man, that's 3 possessions. Like, they can come back on us like this. That is gone from this Warriors team. This Warriors team is an excellent team. This Warriors team could make the NBA Finals. I think they and Houston and San Antonio, obviously, they're all in it. But last year's team felt like a force of nature. Why did it feel like a force of nature? Because Steph Curry was having if not the, certainly one of the greatest offensive seasons ever. When you bring in Durant, they didn't know it was going to. That robbed that from Steph. That's the trade-off. Then when you add to it the depth, the fact that they have less of a margin for error injury-wise, all those things, that's why last year's team was 73-9, and this year's team is fighting for the 1 seed.
And this is not a stat, Nick, but last year they put fear in the opposition.
Yes.
If you look at the number of games and the number of minutes that their marquee players sat out in the second half, I mean, it was ridiculous the amount of rest that they got. You know the reason why? Because when the game started last season, you knew when you were playing the Warriors, you could be absolutely blown out by halftime. And that was the fear that they put in the opposition. They don't have that fear anymore. Even if they do get a big lead now, you can come back on them. They're really careless with the ball. Now, they've been careless with the ball before, but their style and the way they played was able to overcome that. Now their carelessness, it really hurts them because they don't have the bench. They don't have the margin of error.
This year's team, even when Durant's healthy, okay, this year's team looks like a team we've seen before. A ton of talent, a really good team, one of the handful of favorites to win the title. Last year's team looked like, played like, and felt like an inevitability. It took the greatest 3-game stretch in the history of the league by one of the 2 greatest players in the history of the league, and despite that, with a minute left, it's a tie game in the finals. And they totally changed the post.
Even before the finals, winning the 73 games is really special. Following that up with in the playoffs, they struggled a little bit. Steph was a little nicked up. But even their comeback against OKC, which was OKC with KD and Russell. I mean, that was a tremendous comeback. Now, this is not a team that could come back from a 3-1 deficit. So I think the specialness, you know, you have to look at these situations and be like, wow, that team was able to do that. Would this new version of the Warriors be able to come back from that type of deficit? And I don't think so.
We've gotten in a weird place in sports media where if enough people are saying something as if it's conventional wisdom, not only does it become conventional wisdom, but even if all the numbers say it's not true, saying, wait, but the facts and evidence say it's not true, all of a sudden you're the one spewing the hot take. You're the one who's out of bounds. It is as simple as this. I understand that it can't just be wins and losses, but it's in the NBA, when you have an 82-game sample, a lot of it's wins and losses. Last year's team, by the wins and losses metric, was clearly better. Last year's team, by point differential, they're about neck and neck. We already know, if we're really going to get into the weeds about winning a championship, to beat LeBron, you need a rim protector. We know the guys that have beat LeBron: Tyson Chandler, Andrew Bogut, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Dwight Howard, Ben Wallace. This team got rid of their rim protector and replaced him with Zaza Pachulia. So even from like the intangible level, the team's a little bit worse. And oh yeah, by the way.
And Zaza's biggest contribution is letting the rest of the league back into it by injuring their best player.
Right. That's
big
good.
Head, dude.
That's a good point.
You see that size of his head? Man, he got a big old head.
I'm not comfortable with those types of personal attacks about people's appearance.
Man,
I'm not in a position to do that.
I mean, some people can be like, hey, Chris, you got thick eyebrows, you got a big nose. Okay, that's cool. Yes, I'm willing to live with that. But what are you going to do about that big head?
Okay.
There's nothing you can do about that. I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think if they had the exact same team as last year, they would be in a better place? Or
Yes.
do you think that they needed somebody, maybe not Kevin Durant, but somebody to make a difference that would have won that championship?
No, listen, I don't believe this, but here's another thing that's the conventional wisdom. If Draymond doesn't get suspended, they win the title. And even with Draymond getting suspended, they're one Kyrie miss and one Steph make away from winning the title.
They still would have switched the team, though.
And it would have been a mistake.
Yeah.
You had let me ask you this.
And I agree with you, Nick. We've been going back and forth to this since the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So even when they put this team together, it was more of a reaction to them losing to Cleveland compared to, okay, this is the next step in building a dynasty. So, yes, this is not a hot take. We've been talking about this for 5 months, basically.
But they were 60 seconds away from the greatest 2-year stretch in the history of basketball. And when you're like, oh, if you can add the second best player, you've got to. I'm telling you this much. The Bulls that won 72 games and won the finals, they were not interested in bringing in, I'm trying to think of who it would have been, David Robinson. No, we're good. We're good as we are. And what they didn't account for was the guy, talk about something unprecedented, Steph Curry's going to go from getting every first place MVP vote, first guy ever, to not getting a single even also receiving votes. If they, up until a week ago, if they had done team MVP, he wouldn't have even gotten that. They didn't account for the fact that on June 4th of 2016, Steph Curry was unanimously considered the best basketball player alive, and on July 4th of 2016, he was no longer unanimously considered the best player on his own team. And for a guy that plays with his whole game is confidence and flow, what that did to him, what it did to him was it when it made him go from 30 points a game, 25 points a game, from 45% three-point shooting to 39% three-point shooting.
And with the number of threes he's taken, that's a significant drop-off.
It's a huge drop-off. And then all of a sudden, and this is where people are going to call me a hater, and that's fine. All of a sudden, when you're Steph Curry and you don't play defense, and you turn the ball over a lot, and you're shooting the same percentage from three this year as LeBron James, people are going to ask, oh, okay, so like he's a really good player. And that's what he is. Right. A really good player.
Isn't that what they used to say about James Harden before this year? Because he could score, took a lot of shots. Turn the ball over. Didn't play defense.
Sure. And that's and Harden is, Harden's going to be in the discussion for MVP. We'll talk about that with Chris Broussard. Again, I want to make this clear. I'm not acting as if Steph Curry's not an all-star. But the drop from getting all the MVP votes to this year, would it surprise you if he didn't receive a single MVP vote? Wouldn't surprise me.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So we decided we're going to continue on with the 2016 team. Record-breaking 73 wins. Win or lose in the championship, what do you do with Harrison Barnes?
You give him the money.
Give him a max deal.
Yeah, because you don't listen. You think the Cavs wanted to give J.R. Smith $45 million? Of course not. But when you're up against the cap, you got to keep your own guys if you're a championship level team because you can't replace them. I understand.
And
that
you get relief by signing your own guys.
Right. And I get that Harrison Barnes is not a max level player. Sometimes you got to eat it. Guess what? Steph Curry is not an $11 million a year player, but that's what you're paying him.
Right.
You deal with it. If you have the opportunity to keep a team that was 1 minute away from the greatest two-year stretch in the history of basketball, keep that everyone together, you do that. And no, we got to go get the shiny new thing. Kevin Durant, okay, that's fine. You lose 4 of your top 8 rotation players, and your unanimous MVP all of a sudden looks like a nice, really good player, as opposed to a guy that nobody was even surprised. A year ago last week was when Steph hit the 39-footer to beat Oklahoma City. That didn't even surprise anybody. They were in such a groove. Right now all of a sudden they're struggling with they're only a 5-point favorite tonight against a mediocre team. It's not the same team.
I think Steve Kerr tried to fix something that was not broken, and now it's broken, and he can't fix it.
Well, I think that they start tinkering because based on the reports coming out, he was in conversation with Golden State during the season, and he was entertaining this whole concept of leaving OKC before the season was at its midpoint from last year.
The whole and I will during the television and radio break, I will check Twitter at @GetNickWright, and I will have a lot of people tell me how crazy I am. Here's what I would ask for anyone: anyone arguing the Warriors are better this year than last year, present a single shred of evidence that isn't just, they added Kevin Durant, they have to be better.